Good evening, Terps. Woo, good evening. Welcome to A Celebration of EnTERPreneurship. We have a short program for you tonight, one that you're not going to want to miss. But before we start, I just want to say how incredible it is to see this many of you in this room in person. Love seeing your faces. It's awesome. My name is Amy Eichhorst. I'm the AVP for Alumni and Donor Relations at the University of Maryland, and I'm Executive Director of your Alumni Association. I want to get a sense of who's here tonight. Tell me how many of you are business owners. Raise your hand. A lot of you. How many of you would say that you're entrepreneurs? Awesome. How many of you are proud to be Terps? Woo! Awesome. Well, it's just great to have you here, and I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. Did you know that the University of Maryland has been rated one of the top 10 entrepreneur programs in the country 7 years in a row? That's awesome. Something to be proud of. Tonight, we celebrate our Terp entrepreneur community as well as launch our new business directory. We encourage Terps everywhere, internationally, locally, regionally, to do business with other Terps and to support our community by tapping into fellow alumni and students' services and offerings. This new business directory will serve as a catalyst for these connections and create a culture of Terps patronizing other Terps businesses. So before I introduce our speakers, I understand that one of our Alumni Excellent Award winners, our entrepreneur honoree, is here tonight. Evandro Valente, are you here? Evandro's somewhere in the crowd of like several hundred people. If you want to so give him applause. Thank you, Susan. He's with Airgility, and if you want to read about him and other really cool entrepreneurs, read our blog and check out Terp Magazine. So thanks again for being here, all of you, and it is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers. So first is our fearless president, President Pines. Awesome. So strong and thoughtful leadership is what truly allows us to address the grand challenges of our times. And I can't believe how honored I am and how amazing President Pines has been in his tenure here. And I'm sure you're all proud to have him as a president. So thanks for being with us. Next is Scott Plank. And Scott is the founder and CEO. Where's Scott? Oh, over there. He's the founder and CEO of Warhorse Cities. And Warhorse Cities brought to life two major components of our thriving Discovery District, the Wework College Park, which is right here, and the hall that we're in tonight. And as you can see, it's just an amazing venue, and we're so happy that you all hosted us here tonight. It's been really a great addition to College Park. We really do bring a lot of staff here, and I encourage you all to come back and patronize the hall. So without further ado, please welcome Scott Plank and President Darryll Pines.
What's up, Carol? Done. All right.
Okay. How's it going, Terps? Well, thank you so much for coming out this evening for this wonderful opportunity to get together to discuss innovation and entrepreneurship and to connect. This new business directory we're calling EnTERPreneur Network is for all of you to get and stay connected. And we're just delighted that we could be able to host you here in this wonderful facility called the Hall. How about the Hall? How about it? All right. So obviously, I'm not why you're here. You're here because Mr. Plank to my left, Mr. Scott Plank, is an entrepreneur. And we're going to learn a little bit about how did he become an entrepreneur, how did he do this incredible restaurant and facility and venue here called the Hall. So let's start with a few questions. So you are now, I don't know if you know this, but you are in our, what we call our Discovery District. And what we're trying to do is essentially expand our footprint, as you heard from Amy, to be a leading university in innovation and entrepreneurship. And so part of what we were trying to do is reimagine the sort of land that we sit on and turn it into different kinds of spaces like the ones that we're in. And Mr. Plank was part of that discussion. So my first question to you, Scott, is what motivated you as a former alum and as an innovative entrepreneur to want to come back to College Park and be a part of this wonderful Discovery District and create this incredible venue we call the Hall?
Thank you. Thank you, Darrell. And again, thanks everybody for coming. And I'm going to throw some shameless. How about there's no masks, huh? Yeah. So I would say, again, shameless line because I'm a Terp, Darrell. So coming back here was really fun and interesting to think about, ways you can contribute. And I think there's a lot of ways that alumni can contribute, and certainly building that network of people is one of those ways. But from my perspective, it was looking at this with things that I could bring. As Darrell said, I was really lucky and fortunate to talk with then President Lowe and Ken Ullman and Carlo and some of the other group here when they were just thinking about what the innovation district should be. And I had a really good chance and opportunity to sit down and think that through with them.
So why don't you tell them your history? How did you get into innovation and entrepreneurship? And how did you just started being such the creative person that you are?
So let's think. So we can use the Hall as a great example of how we think about, how I personally think about taking on opportunities and ideas. And so the Hall, of course, is, for those that don't know, was literally an old automobile garage, and the building on the other side was sort of a back office for the university. And first thing we always do, like as any entrepreneur, is always trying to think about how can you look at something in maybe a different way. So with the Hall, the first thing I did was come back, as you said, but coming back to the university and recognizing that I was here a very long time ago. I won't tell you when, but it was a long time ago. So recognizing that this community is not the same as it was then.
Absolutely.
So I spent a tremendous amount of time spending time with officials here, with like the head of arts and humanities. I spent time walking around the campus, going up to the Stamp Union, going through buildings themselves and saying, what's going on? How are people, how are students using the buildings and the places here? So, and then I started looking at it also around this idea of what, I won't say missing, but what could be amplified. And so what we started thinking about was, and if you know my background on the real estate side especially, we're very fortunate to build lots of different types of buildings. So we have literally mini warehouse, we have office space, we have apartments, marina, heliport, all these different things, because I like to look at that community not from what I think I want to put there, because that's what I always do, but look at it from what does the community need, and then how do we build community through spaces.
So many of you might not remember, what do you're in this space. Does anyone remember what the space used to be? It was, yes, thank you. It was the Department of Transportation at the University of Maryland shuttle bus facility and maintenance yard for our fleet of vehicles for the entire campus. So this is one way in which Mr. Plank has reimagined the space so we could have this wonderful facility and venue to host events like this. So you're a Maryland graduate, right?
Yes.
You claim to be a Maryland, but you won't tell us what year you graduated.
I am a graduate.
Okay, you are a graduate. Maybe you can tell us what you learned while you were here at University of Maryland that gave you the foundational knowledge and experiences that would lead you to several innovative startups going forward.
So I think this is my experience with college in general is, I think one of the things that I find, again, really important about the idea of college or going to college, and especially here at Maryland, is what you're learning a lot about is how is the world today? How is the world and how do you make sense of it? So you have professors and books and other pieces that you're reading. So thinking about how is something in its steady state. The other thing you learn about in college, for me, as I went to planning and architecture school, is learning about what does disruption mean? And disruption doesn't always, at first seem positive, sort of in the Zen sense. Is it a good thing? I don't know. Is it a bad thing? I don't know. So, but disruption in general, you start learning about that, as you go through your college career. So for me, very much about undergrad is learning about, well, then if those two things are true, then all of these, this environment, this world we're in, is very much, people made. It's not random. It doesn't just show up. And of course, in planning school, you learn the good and the bad things about things not being random, things being organized in a certain way. We think of cities organized in a certain way, and institutional divisions and institutional racial divides, things like that are also part of cities. So we learn about those things, and I think that University of Maryland and college in general is preparing you to go out and say, well, I see how it is, but I have a new vision, I have a different way of looking at it. And I think that's really the heart and soul of an entrepreneur, is figuring out, you have to first say, what the heck is going on? Because you definitely don't want to go into something assuming you know. Particularly for someone like myself, if you look at my background, I jump industries all the time. I spent 20 years building shirts and shoes. We have an unmanned aircraft company. We build cool stuff like this, so lots of different things. So for me, it's always the beginner's mind of recognizing you can't just go into something assuming you know.
Yeah. So you spoke about this concept of disruption. And I think, I spoke with Scott, a couple weeks ago. Yep. Actually, right here in this venue, and had a chance to pick his brain a little bit. And he's very, very interesting fellow. So that's why I'm giving you this background. That
I'm staying focused.
He's staying focused, but here's a gentleman who came out of the School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, but has a really innovative mind, and he looks for these disruptive collisions that he likes to invest in. And so maybe you can share with the crowd, how do you think about your investments, and how does it catalyze how you see the world to make investments for these innovative startups?
Sure. So I think that one thing that all of us should be considering, and some people might say, well, I'm advanced in my career, I've had some successes, I can choose what I want to do, but we all can choose to an extent we want to do. So thinking about impact, to me, is certainly the first thing you have to noodle on. And what does impact mean for the world going forward? So for me, everything is definitely about sustainability, it's about equity, it's about recognizing that, the country is changing, the demographics are changing, all of these things are happening, and you can sit around and complain about it, or you can move forward in a positive sense. So one of the first things I look at is it worth my time, which means, is it something that is positively affecting the world? And then the second piece is, can I actually contribute to that in a very special way or unique way? And so, this is an example of that, or, I'm a very early investor in other startups, and one of them became very popular called Wework. Everybody knows a lot about that, but we actually financed the second building Wework did, which was also this disruptive idea.
Talk about that. Talk about Wework.
Yeah.
And that, I just think, take us back, because maybe some folks in the audience don't know anything about what Wework is. So give them an explanation, but take them back to ground zero, because it was an innovative model of how to bring folks together in an environment that's place setting, but brings entrepreneurs together to innovate in a space. But why don't you tell them about Wework?
Yeah. So. And again, Wework certainly has a lot of publicity around it, but I'd like to think, and I was involved very early with it before the VCs came in, there was a tremendous amount of thoughtfulness. The first building that we did was in the meatpacking in New York City, and it had been a long abandoned building. And we all think of meatpacking right now and say, oh my gosh, it was literally next to the Gansevoort Hotel. What an obvious, dumb obvious thing to do. But it had been vacant for like 15 years. So the WeWork idea, the WeWork model, and this is Adam Newman and Miguel McKelvey, was this idea that I became very interested in because I had been building out both Under Armour's campuses, our stores, our remote offices, literally in Beijing and Shanghai and Amsterdam, Baltimore. And so for me, the big change that made it interesting to me and me willing to back them, I think I'm the biggest angel in WeWork, was that it was also this idea of very strong sense of community and pulling people together to places they might not have always come, and therefore bringing a great deal of people and economic activity to neighborhoods that they wouldn't have necessarily come to. So we can see that example here, which was this WeWork and The Hall is actually something that I did in San Francisco in a neighborhood, very, very disadvantaged neighborhood called the Tenderloin, which many people have heard about. Unfortunately, you only hear about it as these very negative senses, but I can assure you it's a really cool place. Interestingly enough, The Tenderloin was the heart of the show plays and theaters and all these burlesque, all these different things in San Francisco. That was 100 years ago. So the idea was we're going to build a Wework, but they need a place to eat. Again, it wasn't like we're going to build a Wework in a food hall. It was we're building a Wework in a place to eat. That same concept, which was very urban and very much about bringing people to a neighborhood they had not come to, was what we recreated here with the University of Maryland. Again, sort of bringing it all the way back to those meetings with President Lowe and the team was, hey, I think what we can do is bring, in a sense, somewhat of the heart of Innovation District. And that heart also represents what I hope we find here is that innovation does not always just mean technology, right? So innovation can be an artist, it can be literature, it can be a sports, it can be architecture. So many things are about innovation. So what I hope we represent here is that innovation certainly is technology, but it's so many more things than that.
Yeah, so folks, I want you to understand is that what you're hearing from Mr. Plank is that we're the first university campus with a Wework adjacent to the campus. This is place setting. This used to be the Department of Transportation shuttle hub. It is no longer that. It is with the hall and Wework an innovative space where people are coming together. We've held already workshops here for the university thanks to Mr. Plank. Now I'm going to talk to you about something that he's also working on that's very innovative. He has no background, unlike myself, in aerospace engineering, which I'm an aerospace engineer. And
no right to do this.
No right to do this. And I'm like, who are you getting into our space?
Yes.
And so I just share this story with you. We have, and Mike, where's he at? Where are you?
Matt Scassarello.
Matt Scassarello's back there in the back. He's
Yep.
the director of the University of Maryland Unmanned Test Facility in Southern Maryland, in which we design, build UAVs, unmanned systems, and we have about 300 vehicles down there, and we fly autonomous systems all around for different kinds of research. Anyway, Mr. Plank, with another one of his disruptive ideas, decided to look at the technology and form a new firm called Mission Go. And what he is trying to do is he's looking again at how he can be an innovator in a whole new space that he has literally no technical background on.
Thank you, Darrell. Keep saying that.
I just want to reemphasize,
I'm feeling
literally
more
has
confident
no
by the minute.
technical background on, but can see these disruptive elements that will generate a potentially new industry. Maybe you can talk about why did you start Mission Go and kind of give the audience kind of this vision of where you're heading.
Sure. So I will rebut that case with my own version, which is, again, when we all of us, when we approach a problem or a situation, we approach that situation with the things that we're bringing with us, our experiences, our relationships, our connections. One thing that I think I'm very good at is, though, also recognizing that I can also sort of forget a lot of those things, and I can approach with what we commonly call a beginner's mind, right? So the Zen statement of a beginner's mind means I approach this situation, I don't know anything about it. In that case, sometimes you can see things that people who've been in an industry for a long time don't see. So I'm not suggesting that that's always what's happening, but it's why I think to myself, well, when I think of unmanned aircraft, for one, it's been going on a long time. But I look at that beginner's mind and I think to myself, well, how can I distill that to myself who doesn't know anything about it? I'm not a mechanic or an engineer. What I distill it to is the very simplicity of people say, well, wow, drones, that's so cool. When am I going to get a pizza? And I always say the same thing. You can fly an unmanned aircraft in the United States any place you want as long as you're not over people and you can see it. Because that's how I distilled it. What that means is not everywhere. In fact, most places not. Because of the people. The other thing I approach it from the perspective of is, again, maybe not as a technologist, but approaching it from the fundamental hurdle with unmanned aircraft is that we have to, as an industry, be able to gain the public's trust of the people on the ground, not the people who are getting the package. So everything about unmanned aircraft is really about safety and reliability. So that time when we are able to demonstrate that a particular aircraft, and we have a tremendously exciting aircraft, it's a helicopter, it's under 55 pounds, we use it for all sorts of missions, including humanitarian missions. We were literally with Navajo Nation a month ago running all sorts of interesting flights for a neighborhood and people that are, there's 300,000 Native American Navajo. They live in an area as large as West Virginia. So think of all the opportunities that you can use that for. So that said, the vision we certainly have is going to be, I think, a couple of years from today, we're going to wonder why we used a 4,000-pound aircraft with 600 pounds of aviation fuel and 2 pilots to move a 10-pound box. We do that literally every day with an under 55-pound electric aircraft. So to me, this hits all of my buckets, which is it's sustainability and recognizing that fossil fuels are not the way we're supposed to go. It's efficiency around we shouldn't be using overkill of enormous aircraft and gas and all this stuff. There's a better way to do it. And that you're going to be able to deliver tremendously cheaper and tremendously more efficiently to a lot of different people who don't have the opportunity.
Yep. So again, you hear of another disruption by a person outside of an industry looking at it holistically and seeing some of its faults. What he's not sharing with you is one of the actual real business cases that he discovered. So he talked to you about sustainability. So it's an all-electric aircraft. There's been this market that you've heard about of taking packages through the air and delivering it to your home. What we did in partnership with him and with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and the University of Maryland Medical Center is that we actually delivered, for the first time in history in the United States, a live organ to a transplant patient at the University of Maryland Medical System, and they got transplanted a kidney from a delivery of a kidney from a drone that was mission go. So give him a round of applause for that. Never been done before. Terp's doing good work out there, helping people survive. So there's a lot of potential entrepreneurs here in the audience or aspiring entrepreneurs who are in our audience today or seeing us through the live stream. I'm wondering what advice would you give a person just starting out like you were many, many years ago, and they're just about to launch their very first startup. What advice would you give some of our Terps about what they should be thinking about to sort of maybe mitigate any of the pitfalls that they may encounter as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So I think of it as another great way of thinking about these things is it's always going to be about your team, and it's always going to be about, candidly, it's about your heart. So what is it you're trying to do? So things that I become interested in, things that I work on, are things that I'm pretty sure are going to be a good idea. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be disruptive and meaningful to people, but I know that if I do those two things, then frankly money will come. So I try not to think about starting something and saying, I'm going to make a pile of money with this thing, because frankly, usually those kinds of things are either really not interesting, they're soul-sucking, or they don't work out because your intention is wrong, candidly. And then the second thing I think about always is, look to the person to the right and to the left of you, particularly with this is your community and your Terp community, your graduate community, the Dingman Center, Dingman community. The person to the right and left of you are probably the right people to start your venture with because you know them well, you trust each other. And what I hope is, the third thing I'll say is what I always focus on when I'm building a team is shared values. So I hope that you've spent enough time with those people to know that you guys have shared values about how you want to make an impact, what you think is interesting to work on, how you're going to positively affect people in the world.
Okay. What do you notice about what Scott's wearing? He's wearing two things that he was connected to. One, Under Armour.
Absolutely.
And number two, you're in his hall.
Yeah.
Now, he told me when I had lunch with him about 2 weeks ago, he did this hall for all of you. For all of you. Give him a round of applause. He did it for all of you.
Yep.
It was his way of giving back. He's not making much money on this hall, plus not through COVID.
More buyouts. Please, more buyouts.
But
We got 2 years to make up.
he thought that we deserved a better venue to host events like this. So that's his way of giving back to us. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you for being here, Scott. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Do you, right? Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
How about a round of applause for the two of them again?
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. And again, to all of you, we really appreciate you being here. And I thought that Scott had a great message. Mingle, network tonight. The person next to you might be the person that you strike the next deal with. So before we close the program, I just want to say the Alumni Association, we do a lot of programming for you like this tonight. We have an entrepreneur conference coming up in a couple months, so check that out. Get involved. Come to our networking and social events. Really, we're here for you. So one other thing I want to say is these tables along the side, these are some of the first alumni that got into our new business directory, and the students are out in the tables in the other hall. So please stop by, introduce yourself, network. Please consider joining the directory. This is free, and it's a way for you to actually show other Terps what your business is. And Terps, if they're going to go work with a career coach or a communication specialist like this gentleman up front, why not use a fellow Terp when you can? So again, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate you, and go Terps!
Thank you. You're welcome.